and Sherry, are you having a good time? They're supposed to get down there to Bill and Sherry's, Mark and Mary Kay's tonight at 4:30.
Okay.
They was in Southern Illinois yesterday. And I was 18 when that picture. 18.
So how did you and your husband meet?
Okay. My cousin from Missouri was in the Navy, and before he went into the Navy, when he used to visit us down at Eldred, I gave him it was just about graduation picture. I was 18 when we moved up here, and so I gave him my picture, and then when my husband-to-be went in the Navy, my cousin showed him that picture, and he said, "Where does she live?" And he lived in Virginia, just north of Jacksonville, and I lived in Jacksonville. He said, "I can get over there." So he started writing me, and I wrote him back, and then he came home in October, and me and the neighbor girls had gone dressed for Halloween, and we was going to the parade, and the next night he come over, and we went to a square dance in a house south of Virginia, played golden slippers, and we danced, and then he brought me home, and then I guess he was to go back in. I don't think we had another date after that one. And then we rode all that time. He went to Japan and Pearl Harbor, got my ring in Pearl Harbor, and how he knew what size of a ring to get. When he left me that evening, it took me till the next day to know that my class ring was gone. And he had it. And when he cooked on that LCS 91, he lost it. And he about turned the ship, shook it. And he finally found it in a drawer in the flour where he'd been cooking, lost it off in the drawer of flour. So he come home, and I got my diamond, and we were married in August the 10th of 1946. Uh-huh. Okay. I was born south of Eldred at home, and it was June the 9th, 1926, and they were putting up hay. The guys were putting up hay out in a little field west of the house, and there was a neighbor lady come too with the doctor, and that's about all I can remember that they told, Uh-huh.
Did you have any brothers and sisters?
I just have one sister. She was born in she's 3 years difference to me. She was born in 1923, would it have been? I was born in 1926. Uh-huh. It was just us two girls. Mm-hmm.
What was her name?
Mary Margaret. Mine's Florence Elizabeth. Florence Lucille. Here, I said Elizabeth. It's Florence Lucille. My Grandma Butler's name was Elizabeth. Mm-hmm.
And what was your maiden name?
Butler. Uh-huh. She worked at J. Capps and Son, and she worked at the Nash Airplane Factory in Kenosha, Wisconsin in World War II, and it was in the airplane factory. And then she worked at Capps is closed after 17 and a half years. She'd almost made it to 20, and they had to close, so she was off for a while, and then she retired from the bookbindery out by the park. That'd be Hertzberg.
And this was your sister?
Uh-huh.
Where did you work at?
Well, once we decided we were going to waitress at Cosgras on West State. I lasted about a week. That wasn't for me, but my sister worked till they could replace me. I started working at J.C. Penney Company, and over the years I worked 3 different times, and the last time then I worked just after Mary Kay was born. I worked Christmas and then stayed home on the farm and farmed and raised the children all those years from then on. And my sister worked out and I worked on the farm. And Dad passed away Mom passed away in 76 and Dad in 79. My sister and I kept the Shorthorn herd going for over 30 years. Uh-huh. I sold them last cattle when I was 82. Uh-huh. Drove till I was 89. Uh-huh. Trucking the car both. I just drive one every other week to keep them going. Before, but the rest was afterwards.
So whereabouts did you go when you square dance?
North Jacksonville School, Chapin, somewhere over east here. Upstairs they danced. We went up there a lot. And then Yatesville, that's where we joined the community club so we'd go to the dances. We knew the guy that played. And I see North Jacksonville School, South Jacksonville School, and I'm probably leaving one out, but I can't think where else it is. But we had big time.
Was there always a live band?
The guy that Bill knew played a lot. And we come off the floor one night, I believe it was down in Orangeville, but we come off the floor one night down in Chapin, and they said, they complimented us on how pretty it was, and I said, we were having a good time. You know, because it was pretty to watch, and we were having a good time. It's all doing just right. Yeah. Yeah. Took one course in college. I told her how much fun it was to square dance. She took one semester,
Who was this?
my daughter, and up at the University of Illinois. And the next morning she square danced so much that night she couldn't hardly get out of bed. So she thought, boy, enough of this. But she did take it just because I told her how much fun it was. And see, Mark, they don't dance either, round dance or, but I never could round dance very good. They tried to teach me, but I just couldn't do it. Hi, Bill and Sherry. I'm doing great. Gary's here. Are you getting on down to Florida to visit your friends? Bye for now. I was 18 years old, and we moved up to Jacksonville, and 21st of December, and they left a big pot-bellied stove in the dining room. I just don't see how we'd ever made it. The lane would drift so bad, and it wasn't gravel or anything. I think it might have been an oil road, maybe. And we only had this brick part and the frame part of that. Then later on we'd build on some rooms, but they went back to get me a Christmas tree that first year. I always wanted a Christmas tree. They got stuck in the lane, and Dad had to come get the tractor and get him and Mom back to the house. I had a cold, I think, so I didn't go with them.
Now, was this the first year you lived here?
Yeah, this was, it might have, I think it probably was.
What year would that have been?
44.
44.
1944. It was either that or the next year, but I bet it was that year. Because we come the 21st, but you wouldn't thought that we went back, though, to get a Christmas tree with everything just boxed up, but it was either that or the next one.
Was there a log cabin somewhere?
Well, there had been a log cabin in the east pasture, and I can still go back and find the cornerstones. And some people come that, it was back in the 1800s, and some people come that knew those people that built that cabin, and the little boys picked up rocks and found a plumb bob that had survived, and they put all this in their pockets and come on, and they really appreciated me showing them that, and they wrote all them names and dates down on the back of the pictures. Some of these days I'll get those out and we'll read that again. But so, and there was just, I bet it was a dirt floor because you could find the cornerstones, and the creek was down south of that. I bet that's where those people got their water, down to that creek. But the lane would drift so bad. I remember Dad trying to get through one time with the old tractor that had those cog wheels or whatever there was, you know, and you couldn't even do that hardly. But I remember being on there with him when he tried that. And but this year, now that this is 2017, we come in 44, it'll be 73 years. 73 years. I was gone just for a few months and been here the rest of the time.
Wow.
Yeah. We made big gardens. There was a big garden where Bill and Sherry's yard's at now, and then Dad made an even bigger one over in the field north of the house. He just took off a big spot, and we'd make potatoes and corn and tomatoes, and then when we'd get through with all the garden stuff, he'd do turnips, and he'd give them away to everybody, feed sack full of turnips if they wanted that many. So we had big gardens. And then one time we had a butchering, a neighborhood butchering, and Dad made the vat, copper bottom, and fixed it real sturdy. And all the neighbors come in, and I don't remember how many hogs they butchered. There was 2 or 3, I think, because the neighbors butchered 2. And we had the smokehouse yet then. That's what burned down. And we had a big old table in there, and you lay all that out on there and carve it and put the brown sugar and stuff on it and salt, and then trim it all up and everything, and that was a big day. I think we did at least one of them, if not 2. Neighbors enjoyed that. They just took us in when we moved up here like we'd been here all our life, and they've been such good neighbors. My goodness, they were. And we'd had wiener roast in the fall. All of them had come again. One night Mom was sitting at the head of the table. She didn't know what time it was, and it was almost midnight, and she thought, my goodness, here we sitting, it's midnight, like we should have been to bed hours ago, you know. But she was so surprised. But we'd have the best time, just visit, and the guys would roast those hot dogs and bring them in the house, and we had all the other stuff in here. Big times, and most of those old neighbors are all gone now. But we had big times, yeah. Well, Bill was born in 1953 at the old Our Savior's Hospital, and his dad worked at the filling station there on East Morton. It was, can't think of his name now, but anyway, and then Mary Catherine was born in Pasavan in 57, and that's where both of them were. One was born in the old Our Savior's and one in Pasavan. I forgot 2 things the other day. My sister worked at Nesco first before she went to the Caps factory. She worked with enamel pans, and her job was to take her finger and go around the outside that enamel, and she did that so long the same way. She got carpal tunnel, and they didn't know what it was back then, and she had to learn to do it with her other hand. And then I forgot to tell you, she had a pen pal over in England during the war, and that girl would be in the bomb shelter, and she'd write her letters. I've got them all, and they're so interesting to read. And then where was we at after that? I forgot to tell you the other day, I taught them 2 years at a run-room schoolhouse, and I was driving home one day in the old Model A, and a wheel came off in the lane. I just let it sit there and got out and come home. I just had to walk about halfway down the lane. I was able to drive a little bit time we got the 57 Chevy, and I always liked that old car. I sure did. Yeah.
What color was it?
Tan and light tan and then white, but it was tan and white.
Was it automatic or stick shift?
Oh, it wouldn't have been a sticker. I'd never made it. But that's some of the vehicles. My goodness. Dad raised horses and mules, so when we moved, a guy watched us on the highway as we were moving up with trucks and pickups, and never did move big, you know, just brought a little bit every time. That man said, I thought you folks was never going to get moved. Well, we lived 18 years there, and this first time we'd moved, and there was a lot of stuff to bring. And there was a shed, Dad made a little corn shed, a bin, and nobody'd get it on a trailer for him, and it's down there yet. We didn't get it up here. And he made that himself. But that guy seen us going by, and one guy had a livestock hauling truck. He brought loads up for us finally got it all moved up here.
So where'd you move from?
But Eldred, south of Eldred, and he did bring 3 horses, 3 work horses. But he finally went to the tractor and got rid of the horses. But he liked them. He raised them all of his life down there at Eldred. My dad went to auction over at Woodson, and I guess it was a livestock auction. But then they had other things, because he'd always get little chickens and strawberries, and they were good. But we always had the little chickens, had a brooder house, the hover, and fed them and got them in those boxes, and we'd have to bring them in the house, keep them warm enough till we get them over at the brooder house. Chirp, 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 all the time. But they were a lot of fun, and it was an awfully good chicken.
Did he ever buy anything that then brought home and your mom's like, what did you buy that for?
I don't think so, but I think we thought he bought more than we thought he brought home. Yeah. Okay. Went to grade school, my sister and I, all 8 years at North Lincoln, was just a few miles up from where we lived, walked to school. And then, what was it after that? I went 3 years in Eldred High. Excuse me. And they couldn't do the 4th year, so I stayed with my cousin in Carrollton. I'd go on Monday and come home on Friday night and walk to school from north side where the football field's at now to the high schools further on down. But we'd walk to school, and sometimes I'd come home for lunch and walk back. So I got my walking in.
So roughly how far was that? Mile, 2 mile?
Well, I bet it was, because it was from the north end of town to pretty much not quite to the south end. That pretty little hike.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But still there, the rock part is. My cousin still has it.
So what would happen?
This is Mom and Dad. This is my mom's home place.
Down in Eldred. What would happen if someone would pass away?
They sit up all night with them too. That's about as much as I remember, but I remember being back in there in the parlor.
That's where they would set the body up?
Coffin, right in there.
Wow. So they'd have like a wake at the
Yeah,
house?
sit up all night. It's about all I remember. But I told Bill that Grandpa had a Masonic service out on the trees, and Bill said that Grandma was Catholic and her mother was too, and I bet that Bill said that's why he couldn't have had that if he'd have been Catholic. So Grandma married out of the church, but she still made the girls all go to church. There was a spring up in the holler, and it was piped down to the house, came through the spring house, and had there where you could get a drink or wash your hands, but that run on its own gravity, nice cool spring water, the best we ever tasted. Finally put it on down to our house and Aunt Lucy's. So that did 3 places, that water coming out of that big spring way up in that holler. And some little vines growed in there once, and they like to never found that place to repair that so the water would run again.
Huh.
See, I bet they didn't have continual pipe, don't you bet?
That was down in Eldred?
This is about 4 miles south of Eldred. Rock part's still there. And then thinking maybe my cousin would build, but he's tore down his folks' house now and gonna build there, so I don't know who'll ever build down there where that was at. My grandpa taught me a gambling song, and Senator Byrd sings it on the Grand Ole Opry way back when. I am a roving gambler. And that's all I remember, really. And my grandma, about all see, my sister was older than me, and she'd go with her to milk the cows up at the big old barn up in the holler, still there. And she just thought the world of her first grandchild. So she would go with her to milk it. And the only thing I remember about her much was she's sitting in a chair they had a porch in front of It would come like this and like this. And she was sitting there and I was combing her long dark hair. And you know, a kid, I bet I wasn't over that high. And I got it tangled. I must not have come straight down with it. I must have started rolling it up or something. And that's as much as I remember about my grandma and grandpa teaching me that song. As far as anything else, my sister could have remembered more because she's 3 years older than me. And now she's gone, we can get her to tell her part of it. They had hard men, and because back then the work was awfully hard, you know, they had the wheat sacks that were that high, had to be just weighed terribly. And gypsies came by with a wagon and a dog and the horses, and they just got out of their wagon and come up there on that big old porch, and there was pegs hanging up there with the clothes on them. They started grabbing those clothes and was going to steal them. Hard men chased them away. And I saw one band of gypsies after that. They always went the wagon, the horses, and the dog. But they'd take whatever they could get, a chicken or corn or whatever they needed when they went through. I bet we don't have very many gypsies anymore. We took something else now, I guess. Yeah, she done all the baking, kept it in the pantry off the kitchen, and they was all.
This is your mother?
Yeah, they were all good cooks. But she always did the baking. That's why she could bake those rolls and cinnamon rolls. And then my kids could do it. I couldn't bake them. You couldn't eat them. You skipped me and went right to the next generation. But anyway, we visited, and they had a storm cellar built into the bank. And when that tornado come, they didn't get in that storm cellar like they should have. Stood on that big porch I was telling you about that come across the front and then back like this. And anyway, it did do some damage. And my sister was about, if I'd been in a high chair, she was down at our place. We wasn't even up at Grandma's. Had to walk up there later to see what happened to anybody up there. Done a lot of damage. And my sister, my aunt cried, and my sister thought, boy, something must be pretty bad wrong. And that's what it was. She was scared, because it took a silo and a big machine, not a machine shed, where you'd have a lathe and do things like
a workshop?
Workshop, yeah, that's what. And they loaded all the kegs and the nails and stuff up on the hillside. So they were lucky. I'm telling you, they were lucky, because if that went straight like this, and the house sat over here, and that's what sheltered them enough, I guess it just went straight through. I got pictures. Yep.
After the tornado?
But I was in a high chair down at my home place, and they tried to get to the basement, and the cellar door was on the outside. Dad went to open the door, and the suction was so bad he couldn't, so we toughed her out in the house, and you could see the birds couldn't land, and the hog houses were turning over, and they just toughed it out right there. And when that was over, then walked up there to Grandpa's to see what all had happened up there. And Aunt Lucy had damage too. Hers was in between there, and they blew quilts from over in Calhoun County across the river over to there. Hung a mailbox, somebody's mailbox, over a limb. And there you talk about straws going in the wood. It would. And tore down a brick schoolhouse, stone schoolhouse, just right there almost by her house. She's lucky she didn't get more than they did. She got some damage, but not didn't take her away. But that's strange, it went up those hollers like that. So if I was born in 26, must have been the May of the next year. And I was, I bet it was in the May of 27. I bet that's right. But these stories, I've just kept them down over the years. So you said it was 43?
42?
42, and it could have been like right in there. Yeah. Okay. We lived up in the holler up on the bluff. The levee broke right down in front of our house. It just made a big break, and you could hear it roar for days. And that water came, I guess, from the river. And then it went clear to Eldred, the whole 4 miles up to the first floor, just under the first floor, which would have been a good 8 feet, 10, probably.
In the
Yeah.
village of
Yeah, and
Eldred.
all the people who lived in that part from the river to there had to get out, get their equipment out, get their livestock out. Dad take it, the Coast Guard came in, and those boats that'll go right off in the water and then still run on the road. I forget what you call them, amphibious or something. Well, anyway, they came and they go rescue stuff that got caught out in it before anybody could get it all out. And my sister and I helped the Red Cross. They was giving them sandwiches when they. Now the ferry boat usually was on the river. It was deep enough the ferry could come on this part, where it was flooded. And then the guys would go out and rescue stuff, and we'd give them a sandwich when they were in between they were resting. And my dad went out with that Coast Guard in a boat. They went down to a big fancy house where Will Coxon's lived. And anyway, he said there's a big ham down there in the freezer. This guy dove down in there, and sure enough, he got that out. And it was up under the first floor of that big house. They just had a plantation. It was so pretty. But Dad rescued stuff in the boats too. Whatever they could get, like something that was floating around that needed to be rescued. And then my sister, she went to the Columbiana Seed. I gotta get some. She went to the Columbiana Seed House, which that was famous seed corn back then. And they were moving the seed corn higher because it was going to flood the building. There were some guys working too, and they were moving these sacks of seed corn. That one guy said, I was so tired I couldn't hardly keep going. I saw that woman just throwing them sacks of seed corn. I thought, you better get busy. And that was my sister. I couldn't do it. I wasn't stout enough to help. I was there with her, but I wasn't stout enough to help. Temporary in the gymnasium of our school. So canceled everything. We got to have one thing, but we didn't get to have it all. And we never did get yearbooks on account of the war. Paper shortage. Yeah, well, that's as much as I remember about that, but I thought about it when we did the tornado. The Coast Guard man, he either stayed at our house or ate a meal with us. I can't remember which it was. And Mom had wilted lettuce, so this must have been in the spring. Yeah, this flood must have been in the spring, because her Mom had wilted lettuce. I bet it was late spring or something. But, excuse me, he liked that so good that when he went back to St. Louis, or whatever rank he was in the service, it's on that letter, I've still got it. And he wrote her back and said, oh, that southern lettuce was sure good. I bet it was hard telling what else she had with it. But I saved that letter and put it in my memoirs about the flood. Hi, Bill and Sherry. I'm doing great. Gary's here. And are you still having fun? Did you get down to Fort Myer? Bye.